And hi,
Let's start.
everybody. Welcome back to Everyday Equity, Everyday Ways to Make a Change. My name is Pooja Kotari, your host, founder of Boundless Awareness. And with me today is a guest that I am so excited to have. Burhan Razi is a VP and Chief Operating Officer at the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy. Um, Burhan, I'm so happy you said yes to this. Thank you very much for being here. I want to pass it on to you to describe a little bit more about your role, your organization, what you do.
Um, Pooja, first of all, thank you for inviting me. So happy to be here. So excited. Don't get to do this kind of stuff often, so it feels like it's my first podcast. So just
Yeah.
um, I work with the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy. We are a philanthropy watchdog, if you will. We sort of like try to hold philanthropy to account, to make sure that they are sort of investing in movements, investing in more progressive spaces, and giving money the right way, and not just like uh, giving money to other like billionaires and so on. So
Mhm.
that's sort of what we do. It's a small organization because it's like in the philanthropy infrastructure space. So we're about 19 people. I'm the chief operating officer, so everything that the program team doesn't want to do somehow falls into my plate. So, your HR, your finance, we're currently working with our auditors. We're also doing a performance review situation. Um, Facilities, you know, and all of those things that fall under operation are my remit. And I've been with NCRP for like a little bit more than 3 years now. Before that, I worked at a different nonprofit in DC on like environmental issues as in a finance capacity. Yeah, I'll stop there. Yeah.
Yeah, that a lot of the so much of what you do in the administrative space. I feel like most people don't really get to see the ins and outs of that. And you've done some really interesting things at NCRP. It's so interesting that I actually felt like you had been there for like 15 years, but you have accomplished so much in quite a short bit of time. So, this LinkedIn Live series is about equity. Um, so, my first question is, why is equity important, not only to you, but to NCRP? Why think about it? And I'll ask some more questions after that. But why does equity matter?
It's a good question. It's funny that one even has to answer that question, right? Like that just becomes like, wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's the time and place we live in. I think equity matters, right? Because like we want to have make sure that everybody has the same opportunity, everybody has the same, and that's sort of like the value we as an organization have is to make sure that funders understand that equity matters, right? And so for me as an operations person, like making sure that those values that we are telling other people they should have are values that we inherently implement within our organization as well, right? So it's been extremely important to make sure that we are thinking about what the right hiring strategy is so that we have the right mix of people at the organization, that we have policies internally that make sure that different parts, like different folks who have different circumstances in life, have the same sort of like ability to function in the organization and aren't hampered by maybe the fact that they have kids, or maybe the fact that they have difficult working hours, or like live in the West Coast or something like that. So that for me was always like I mean, obviously, equity is essential, right? Like, we want to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity to sort of do their best, right? And within that, for me, what makes it key is like it outwardly, but also inwardly.
Okay. So, a lot of industries might work in equity, and then as a contradiction, their internal culture is not inclusive, it's not equitable. So, like, there's not really a paradigm for like an organization that is like doing the work externally and internally. And so in a world where most people are not thinking about equity inside the workplace, why did that matter to you? Why does it matter to you or to NCRP?
That's a good question. I, I, it's interesting for me. Equity started with me being like in the think tank space where researchers are doing like the cool work that's like changing the world, and then ops is like just there, right? And
Yeah.
the support staff.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
to me, that felt inequitable, right? Like you generally have like this class of people who are like, oh, you're just here to make sure that the machine runs so that we can do this cool work, which like, you know,
Yeah.
sure, but like we matter too, right? So it was like it's slightly personal, but also like I've also seen then, right? Like folks, like you said, the paradigm of like externally you're asking for all of these amazing things to be done, and then internally you just forget that though you have those values that you espouse, right?
Yeah.
So for me it was like so important to one just be like make sure that there's an equity lens to it, right? But also to make sure that like for me equity is also about like wellness, right? And how can we make sure that all of our team is just like happy at the workplace, right? And sort of well, or like understands that we are trying to like make sure that things are equitable for them, and make sure that things are like we care as an organization. Because yeah, and that's where my sort of like motivation to make this work has come from.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I mean, one, you need kind of like the buy-in from everybody to achieve what you've got. So it's another aspect of this that everybody also wants to like live by those values and principles. Um, what is an example of something that that you were able to implement, or I'm sure many things that you've been able to implement to achieve some more equity?
So one of the things I'm proudest of, right, and we started this a couple of years ago now. We've been like using this is the 4-day work week that we sort of implemented within the organization, and it took a little bit of convincing, especially with the CEO, right, to like demonstrate how there's been so many studies that are being done across so many different organizations. A little bit in the US, a lot more in Europe. Like I honestly think the biggest study I saw was out of the UK and Ireland about how
Mhm.
the 4-day work week actually leads to happier folks at the workplace, right? And happier folks mean that folks are like more willing to do the work. They are more like motivated to do it, and it like productivity actually goes up because right. And so that was part of it. Like seeing all this stream of studies. Secondly, honestly, like I my own energy runs out by like about noon on Friday anyway, right? So it's like
Yeah.
such an unproductive day. So like why are we like doing this like post-industrial like, oh, you have to work 5 days because you don't have to work seven anymore. So five is the important one because the labor unions were only able to get 2 days off and not more, right? Like,
Mm,
and
mm,
again, policies that were designed for an industrial age, not the service industry in the same way, right? Like
yes.
um, so we were able to implement the 4-day work week, and I'll tell you, it's been tremendous, right? Like that extra day off for people on we just made Fridays, NCRP Fridays or Thursdays now because there is no Friday. Friday is the weekend. Having a 3-day weekend means Mondays are not like a horrible day anymore. People come into the workplace like happy. It's like, yeah, I'm refreshed. I had a full weekend. I had 1 day to chill, 1 day to get my chores done, and 1 day to just be,
Mm.
right? Like, and so like folks come in, and it's been tremendous to see sort of like how happy and like excited everybody's been to sort of just have that time, right? Free time.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. So some people might hear this and be like, I don't, how could you possibly get 5 days of, especially, where in some industries where you have to bill your work. And two, people might think like, I can't even imagine like how this is, even though there's the evidence there, but often, we have this like cognitive bias coming in. How do you like measure? How do you measure this?
So that's a good question, right? And I think one, like, yes, we had to change some things around what and how we did it to make sure that this worked, right? And so one of the things that dropped off immediately was like unnecessary meetings. We have this culture now of like, oh, why don't we set up 45 minutes to talk about this? And like, we only need 24, but we'll spend the entire 45 doing it kind of thing, right? Or like,
Yeah,
do
right.
we need to meet every week? Can we like check in every other week and so on? So like, so what we did is like we because the calendar becomes compressed, you have to sort of like find more time within it. and be much more mindful of how you spend your time, right?
Yes.
So for
Yes.
one, that, and B, we also found that people were just like, you are so much more motivated. Like Thursday is such a productive day because you know what you have after Thursday? A 3 day weekend, right?
Right.
People get so much done on that day. So I think it's yeah, like just thinking through how to like compress the calendar has been like a really effective. And Pooja, remind me of your question again, so because I feel like I've went on a slight tangent.
No, no, you're on it. How do you
Uh,
measure? How do you
so the
measure that this is
two
going well?
Yeah, so the two ways we measured, right? Like it was tricky because like we we've been thinking about how to measure our work in so many different ways for so long, and it's not
Mm.
easy because it's like the think tank world of like research, right? And like how do you measure the impact of research? So that's let's not go into that, right? But like for me, the two things we try to measure is like how productive are folks being, right? And then also how good they're feeling, right? Like, where's burnout at? Because honestly, the other impotence for us to start this was like we were coming out of COVID, right? This was like 2022. It was 2 years after COVID.
Mm.
I had so many people on the brink of burning out, right?
Yeah.
Like because like COVID, like we kind of dove into our work and like we're like, okay, we're gonna get through this crisis by like just working really hard because yay work. But people burnt out and they were home all the time, right? So it was like so many different elements we were dealing with. And so what we did is we said, okay, let's talk to supervisors and say, hey, once this changes, can you keep an eye out on like, is work still getting done? Are we seeing significant delays in our timelines that we originally thought through, right? And like, is that changing significantly? Is that getting keep getting delayed because our timelines are not realistic anymore? Are we
Right.
still pushing out the same number of publications that we did, say, last year or 2 years ago, right? Is that significantly changing? So we came up with a couple of interesting proxy metrics to sort of
Hmm.
do that. And the other metric we came up with, which honestly we folded into our performance review as well, is like, how are people feeling, right? Like, how are you doing? Like, are
Yeah.
you feeling like you're overwhelmed? Are you feeling like you're burnt out? Are you feeling like you have a good life, work-life balance? And
Hmm.
frankly, we've seen like across my team that most people have good work-life balance, right? And I will say, Pooja, from an equity perspective, the other thing that we sort of like dealt with through all of this is this like the need for urgency in like late stage capitalism, if you will, right? And like constantly being like, oh, we have to be like urgent and like because we're gonna solve this crisis tomorrow if we don't do what we need to do today, kind of thing. We kind of address that as well a little bit to say, let's not, right? Like we have a timeline on how we want to make the impact that we want to make the impact on. Let's work with that timeline. Let's not constantly have this like urgency thing hanging over our head where it's like, oh, we need to just like keep churning and keep doing, otherwise we won't be able to save the world. It's like, so I think that really helped like set the stage of like, guys, the context is we want you to work hard, but we don't want you to like burn yourself out so that you're not like capable of working anymore. Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not like you're making widgets where it's like, okay, we went from 100 widgets a day to 120 or to 80. Like it's not measurable in this way.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Um, and also, it's interesting reflecting back on how you started this topic, which was, the labor unions, got these 2 days off, and in a time where everybody was making widgets, and it wasn't a service economy, um, and it's arbitrary. Like, why not 3 days? Or have some more like flexible work schedule that's like not 9 to 5. So um, I can imagine, that people with families have a really different understanding of work-life balance, or people, I'm sorry, people with, taking care of anybody.
Exactly. Caretaking
All
leaves.
of these other responsibilities that just can't get done in 2 days. Like you said, the chores, the caretaking, the soccer lessons, the home health aide that, didn't show up. I mean, there's just so many. So, for example, if somebody is supposed to be working on a Tuesday and they care for an elderly person whose home health aide didn't like called out sick that day, is it possible in this to take that Tuesday off and work on Friday instead, for example? Like, how does that work during the week when all of these shenanigans can pop up?
So we've always had that policy. We're a remote organization, so we've always worked on like I mean, there's a timeline to the work getting done. How you accomplish that timeline is completely up to you, right? Like we're no longer in an office environment where you constantly need to like clock in, clock out, right? Like what's important is that the work gets done, right? And obviously,
Yeah.
like sometimes you need to talk to the rest of the team somehow, right? So you want to be available in some of those hours. We understand everybody has their circumstances that they need to take care of. So we don't even necessarily ask people to flip it, right? Like in terms of if you need a Tuesday off and then you can work on Friday. It's like if you need to take time on Tuesday, take time on Tuesday, right? And if you need to like put in some hours in the evening or on Friday, you don't have to tell anybody else. Like this is not even a conversation you have to have with your supervisor because the supervisor is not going to ask when you work. The supervisor is just going to ask, is the work done? Or if not, then why not? Right? Like, well, let's
Right.
talk about that. And
Right.
so that's been so easy. And honestly, like parents, especially, one of the things I love about the 4 day work week is like Friday is like for some parents, right? Like it's a great day because the kids are still in childcare.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so they actually
Thank
get
God.
time off, right? Yeah, it's truly because the weekends for parents aren't a free weekend, right? Like you have the kids
Yes.
at home, so you're not really free. You're like then like right working with your kids. So the Friday is truly becomes like this, and so that's for me like why the equity lens in this is so important, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody gets to use that. Some people use it to do chores because like banks are open on, and like I will admit being an
Totally.
early adopter to the 4 day work week has been very helpful because like if the doctors are in, the bankers are in, so you can get all of those things appointments done, right? Which means your work week
Yes.
is even more productive because you don't have to rush an appointment at 8 a.m. on Wednesday. You can just get it done on Friday.
Yeah.
So that's been
Yeah.
really incredible. Um,
Yeah. Totally. Totally. I forgot about that. Like, yeah, the rest of the world is working on Friday. So it is really nice to get those errands done. That's true.
we call it
Um,
life admin. You can get your life admin done on Fridays.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So, yeah.
Um,
Um,
when people, in similarly situated like organizations or in the fundraising world, but also in like kind of smaller organizations approach you, are they surprised to learn about the 4 day work week? Do you see other people adopting this?
We've definitely seen a few organizations within our sphere adopt this, right? And I feel like a couple of years ago there was a big wave because like there was these research studies coming out and that
Yeah,
helped people push across. I think it's kind of slowed down since then. But frankly, I mean, for us in the philanthropy space, it's actually not that uncommon, right? And like that's our primary stakeholder in terms of who we work with and who we're trying to target. And for
right.
those folks, it's like very common that 4 day work weeks exist because the closer you are to money and power, the more like you can make your own schedule kind of situation, right?
Yeah,
So that's yeah, that has been like an easy sort of thing. I will say, however, there's times when all of us work Fridays, right? Like if a big conference is coming up and we just need to put the time in, you work the Friday, you
yeah,
might even work the Saturday, right? If I have to respond to the auditors about something, I work will get done, right? So that's the other thing is like we are very flexible about like, hey, if it's a slow week, it's a slow week. We understand. We don't need you to make up work just to do it, but
yeah.
sometimes it'll be more work, right? And that
Right,
like it should balance out over the course of the year.
right, right. I wanted to mention, the reason I wanted you here and for our audiences to meet also is because we did work together, um, and on some anti-oppression work, some workshops, some internal discussions, and I have to say, working with NCRP, it's like I kind of brag about you to like all my other clients because I say, look, there's an incredible organization that's actually implementing the same equity ideas that you feel are impossible. And it's just very inspiring, and aspiring to see people getting it done. Of course, it takes this beautiful mix of people who want it to happen, all of the leadership and the board, and like people want to see it happen. So that's like a huge gift. But to actually apply these principles in such a, like you said, in a late stage capitalist society where urgency is still kind of like the white supremacy tool that so much of us are using. And, we berate ourselves for not getting things done. We set up kind of this fake standard that doesn't have to exist. And
Absolutely.
it could
Yeah.
lead to a lot more happiness if we were like, this is all man-made obstacles, and we can remove them. Kind of like this government shutdown. So
uh,
um, anyway, so we were talking about, the equity ideas that have become implemented. And, earlier when we were preparing for this, we were talking about family leave policy. So if people have children. So can you tell us what NCRP has implemented, why it's more equitable, why it's so important?
Absolutely. So yeah, we one of the other policies I wanted to put in place was like a paid family leave policy, right? And I did some research, did some histories. As a fun tidbit I found is the U.S. government, when it was first like pushing, the federal government was pushing its own policy. It was the Clinton administration who had like pulled together a proposal and that they were going to implement, and it was going to be 6 months of paid family leave, right?
Okay.
And this was the US government back in the 90s, right? Like
Yeah.
6 months of paid family leave. They couldn't get it done, so it landed in the Bush administration, right? Which, we can talk about that in a separate way. But it landed with the Bush administration,
Right.
and they were like, oh, this is too far along. We can't cancel it, but obviously, we're not going to do 6 months. So that landed in like that 3 month, 12-week period that like kind of exists in federal. That's why
Yeah.
that's the case. So as I was reading, all the research is like, oh no, you should do a year, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like the thing you should allow like new parents to do and so on. But that was very hard to implement, and we had to see sort of how it went. And so what we found is a good compromise about 16 weeks, right? That's a good 4 month period where everybody like gets a real chance to like bond with the child or take care of a sick parent or whatever else you need to sort of like make sure that things are getting taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Um, Another thing I read while I was doing this, the research on this was like it kept coming up that please don't discriminate on how you give the leave. Please don't give mothers more than fathers, for example, if it's the birth of a child. And I've seen this before because like other like traditional American um, leave policy on this is like, oh, you get on short-term disability,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's for women, that's like you can get up to like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, and we'll pay you through that short-term disability and you'll get like lower wages. And like for men or fathers in that instance, you just get like 2 weeks or something, right? We'll
Right.
give you that and like you go back to work. So what I read is like if you want to do this properly, don't discriminate. Give the people exactly the same amount of like leave, right? So because honestly, what it does is it like um, pushes this like heteronormative, or not even heteronormative, like the male hegemony of like the caretaking has to be done by the woman, so therefore the man can only be home for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
right? Which like we're perpetuating things that we're trying to break here, right? So
Right.
that was important for us. It's like no, we'll give the father will get 16 weeks, the mother will get 15, like whoever you are, right? Whatever your relationship is, you will get 16 weeks.
Right.
And the other thing we implemented, which it was a tricky thing to make sure we could afford it and so on, but we pay people fully, right? There's no cut in your wages when you go out on leave. Like you will
Mm-hmm.
be paid, you will be retained, like right, like there's no concern about your job. And what we've done is, if like for example the state you live in is willing to put some money in, right? With some states have it, you will get that money, and then we will give you the difference between that and your wages,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yep.
So that we make you whole, so that for those 4 months, like I just because I'm not working doesn't mean my expenses have gone away, right? I still need money to like do, and
Right.
like actually I need money even more so because like I'm trying to figure out how to take care of a child that I have not done before, for example, as a first time parent. So that was really helpful in like thinking through how this policy should be designed. And again, the way I was able to convince my CEO and the board was like, we can't be a progressive organization and push for progressive values from funders and not have the same level of progressive values within the organization, right? And what's
Yeah.
that done is it's meant that for staff between the 4-day work week and such like good parental leave policies and stuff, nobody wants to leave. Everybody is happy to stay at the organization because it's a good place to work that they know is taking care of you, right?
Yes.
And for retention's purposes, right? And like even from an equity purpose, like it's like people want to stay and they're happy, right?
Right. 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 I mean, it's not too often that equity and the bottom line match up. But here it does. I mean, the cost, it's funny because, so many companies, private companies are so willing to accept her high turnover. They're willing to accept, like, the place is not inclusive. They lack the culture. No one really wants to be there. They'll pay the lawsuits. They'll settle them. Uh, they refuse to make these equitable changes, and they'd actually, even though the turnover is hurting them, they're willing to accept that in lieu of these, like, kind of big long-term changes that you have made. Uh,
Well, and I think just to add to this, and like bringing New York into this context, right? Just because I'm so excited about what happened in the race, like the Mamdani policy on free childcare for New Yorkers, right?
yeah,
If I was a corporate employer in New York, I would be so excited right now. Like
yeah,
you have a workforce that is like probably even willing to take a pay cut because they don't have to spend $20,000 on childcare anymore. Like they have free childcare from the state. They will be happier. They will be at ease because they're not trying to figure it, right? Like parents will, like every single parent in the city will be like 70% less stressed about that situation, which is what you want in your employees, right? Like so
right.
it it's actually like it's not even like, yeah, like to the point of like this whole idea that progressive policies don't match the bottom line. It's like it's actually you couldn't do something that's better for your bottom line because you have people who will
Yes.
stay and are happy and are like not constantly asking for more money because the childcare people like increase their costs, right? Like
Yes,
it's
yes,
tremendous.
totally, totally. And the wage stability of the caregivers at the daycare centers or in schools, all that also, everybody wins from
Exactly.
something like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. To think that you don't need to spend, 25 grand a year on childcare is like, yeah, it's a remarkable. It's how we
Exactly.
felt actually when universal pre-K was rolled out, like, oh, this is
Like,
phenomenal. And now there's some, like, free 3K, and it's like, the more, it's such a relief that that financial burden isn't on you. And so you're right, it is magnificent. It's a magnificent idea. Um, people say, it can't be done, and they're so, it's so funny how I'm trying to put this into words. Um, our the capitalist way of life is so entrenched in everybody that but capitalism says to find, the most efficient route. And yet there's, like, infinite inefficiencies because we're, like, so tied to this, like, exploitation system. Um, so can we talk a little bit about, we only have a few minutes left, but when I talk about exploitation, a lot of people, who aren't, like, thinking about this like you and I are like, what? I don't exploit, as a leader, I don't exploit people. Like, I care about everybody. Like, how could you possibly put that out there? And but the idea is more, it's how do I say it? It's like, help me out here. The system is not, we're
right.
not saying that
Yeah.
individuals are
Yes.
are doing something hateful or horrible.
Right.
We're talking about the system as a whole affects us all in exploitative ways, like this, for example, childcare situation, where certain people get exploited more, or if we're in a hetero relationship, one person, a woman is exploited more than a man, inherently.
No, and yeah, it's like it goes back. So I studied economics, right? Like I grew up in that space and like the whole like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and right, like for me, it's like the reason I like this is because it's not just like we're being more progressive because those are our values, right? It's like no, us being more progressive as an organization and have those values means we have better functioning employees. It's actually a win-win, right? Like this whole like dichotomy of like no, you can either have one or the other, right? You can either have great benefits and then
Yes.
everybody's unhappy. It's like, no, dude, actually, the best employers in the country, like even like the consultant class, right? They have better benefits than everybody else, right? Like, why shouldn't everybody have the same level of benefits? And like, yes, like ideally the state is providing as well, but we live in America and like we're making progress, but it's gonna take its time. So like
Yeah.
that's for me is like this idea that like it's not just exploitation, right? It's like, oh, I have to bring the hammer down so that like unless people are held to account, they won't work as well, right? It's like that's not actually true. If people are happy and believe in what they're doing over here, they'll work. But your job is then to keep them happy,
Yeah.
right? Like, and then yeah, they'll show up and they'll do their best work when they're happy, as opposed to their best work when they're pressed under a thumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the idea of respect versus fear, you know?
right.
Are
Right.
you afraid and that's why you're working, or do you respect your workplace so much that that's why you're working?
Right. Yeah.
One has like a markedly different effect than the other.
Right.
Um, I feel like I could sit here for hours and we could talk about these
But
issues. That's why I love speaking with you. If there's anything that you could leave our listeners with before you hop off, like a way to think about like equity in your daily life, or a way to act in a more equitable way in just a regular daily thing.
I think for the lesson I've learned, right, that I've internalized over the last few years in trying to implement this stuff is like, with especially with DEI and like thinking about equity as a whole, right? It's like what I've pivoted towards is much more like wellness and joy at the workplace than it is equity, right? If we have good policies that are progressive, that are meant to like help everyone, that is inherently more equitable than me being mindful of like every single person's different emotions. Right? It's
Huh.
like the 4-day work
Yes.
week for me is inherently more equitable because everybody gets this extra time to be more well, to take care of themselves, right? Because we can't, right? Like we can't take care of every person, but we can provide them the time that they need, right? And a living wage that they need to take care of themselves, kind of
Yes.
thing. So
Yes.
that's what I found is like, we don't have to like, I mean, obviously there's work to be done that's more pointed and directed, right? Like, but I think also just the good old fashioned, like these are good policies to implement, that in itself is equitable,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like that. If you're thinking about this, or you are questioning it or curious, like that's the place to start. It's like think about people's wellness, not like how do I get everybody's individual circumstances under control?
Right.
And
Exactly.
you don't need to work that hard.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Just make,
Yeah.
yeah, give them a chance to be happy, and that's all anybody wants anyway, right? Like out of this. So yeah, that's what I'll say.
Burhan, thank you so much for being here. NCRP is a fantastic organization. Follow them, look them up if you don't know them already. And I just thank you so much for your time today. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks with our next guest. Thank
Okay, thanks
you.
so
Take
much, everybody.
care.
Bye.
Bye.